Good evening and welcome. Good evening. Welcome to the Marion City Council meeting. It is now November 6, 2024, 7 p.m. in the Marion City Council chambers. And we're going to call this meeting to order, and we'll start out with prayer. And our guest today is Mr. Amante King. If you want to make your way up to the microphone, come on up, sir. And just make sure you hit the red button.
Come on, let's pray together. Father God, we come now saying thank you for just giving us another day, waking us all up this morning and giving us breath in our bodies, the clothes that we have on our back, the food that we were able to eat today, everything we need to be able to live, move, and have being. And I want to pray that your will be done in this meeting tonight. I pray that everything that happens tonight through this agenda would be for the betterment of our community, for our city, for the people that live here. And I pray for every individual in leadership that you would continue to cover them, that you would continue to lead and guide and protect them along the path that you have for their lives. And ultimately, we want Marion to be a place that is not just good economically, but that represents you. And so help us through this meeting tonight to move a little bit closer to that. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Amante. And now the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Eric Marshall. All right, thank you so much. And we're going to move into tonight's, actually, we're going to do roll call before we move into that. So, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane.
Here.
Marshall.
Here.
Fordyce.
Here.
Brunner.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Witten.
Here.
Cowgill.
Here.
McKinley.
Here. Okay, now we're going to move into tonight's community spotlight, and we're going to spotlight the 212 grant recipients and celebration. So I'd like to invite Dawn Brown and Megan Mathias from the Community Foundation up to the microphone, and they're going to share some information about that grant, and then we'll do a photo. Go ahead. Can you turn the microphone on?
Yes, thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm Dawn Brown, this is Megan Mathias, and we are delighted. We brought a couple of friends with us. Raise your hand if you're friends back there. Thank you very much. Exactly. So we are celebrating the 212 grant cycle tonight. The reason we named it the 212 grant cycle is because at 210 degrees water is hot. 211 degrees water is hot, 212 degrees water boils. That means 1 degree makes a significant difference. When water boils, it can actually power a steam engine, and that's pretty powerful. The folks back here that received the 212 grants, this grant cycle obviously didn't know we were going to have a $400,000 grant cycle this year. It was a total surprise to them, thanks to the generosity of the mayor. This was his brilliant idea, and for you guys for approving that. So we wanted to take some time tonight to show you how we dispersed that $400,000 through our grant making process. As you recall, this is a partnership between the Community Foundation and the City of Marion. The Community Foundation did not accept any of this money for ourselves. This is a service that we provided to you because Megan does it really, really well. And because of the committee that we have, we had 3 committee members from the foundation and 4 committee members that were appointed by the mayor, and they volunteered their time to do this. This is what partnerships are all about. Sometimes the foundation has the money and the nonprofits have the resources. In this case, the city had ARPA money and we had the resources to help you, and we would like to celebrate the 15 recipients tonight. Would you like to read those off, Nick, or would you like me to?
I would be honored to read them off.
Please.
But actually, I know we had 2 council members that sat on the selection committee, so
We did. David
I'm going to
Kane
put
and
them
Mike
on
Klein.
the spot, actually.
Yes.
So maybe Councilman Kane, if you want to read the left side, and Councilman Klein on the right side. Does that sound good? Since you guys were part of the decision making, I'll let you do some of it.
I would be glad to do that. So starting, these aren't in any given order other than from top to the bottom. The Boys and Girls Club of Grant County, Cancer Services of Grant County, Cardinal Greenway, Carry Services, First Light Child Advocacy Center, Grant County Rescue Mission, Grant Regional Adult Education, and Historic Marion.
And we have Job Source, Meals on Wheels, Radiant Health, St. Martin de Porres Center, the Quilters Hall of Fame, the Salvation Army, and the Wilson Vaughn Hostess House.
All right, thank you, council members. And so what we would like to do is have one representative, just one from each organization, because we only have so much room up here, to come up to the front, and so we can get a picture with one person from each organization and the council, as well as Dawn and Megan with the giant check. So
Yes, we brought a giant check.
The giant
a very
jumbo
giant check. And Megan and I just want to remind you, in case you didn't notice, we both wore daisies tonight for the city of Marion. So we bring it when we come. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good attention to detail that I was not noticing tonight. So I appreciate that. So yes, so if you're a part of one of those organizations, just send one representative up just into the middle front of the room here if you could. And then the council members will kind of join in behind, and we'll get a photo.
Photo taking too. Hi, how are you? As long as everybody stays like. I don't know. I was gonna start doing some. Okay, Megan, your end needs to come up just a smidge. There we go. I got you. Okay. Red, I can't see you. Red and green, I can't see you. Okay, I think we got everybody. I can't see you, Nick. There he is. Okay, who's next? Everybody?
I'm missing mine. Okay. Yeah. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'll give a chance for everyone to either sit down or leave. You're welcome to stay, of course. We always like a good audience here to see what's going on in the city. That's exciting. I'm glad. I will say I was very happy as how quickly that went through. So appreciate Councilman Klein and Councilman Kane for being part of those decisions. And I guess that's all they wanted. Everyone's leaving. Meeting's over. Taking their money and going, yeah. We'll give a moment here for them to clear out. But yes, that went really quick, really smooth, and I know that's going to do a lot of good.
I will say this, Mr. President, that this city would not be the city that it is without our nonprofits that step forward and do what they do, because they're good at what they do, and we appreciate them.
That's very true. I appreciate that. Councilman Klein, did you want to add any words as far as the process?
No, I'll ditto Councilman Kane.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much. We're going to move into now the city employee spotlight. Let me pull this one up here. Oh, look at that nice picture. So our city employee spotlight tonight is on Marion Police Sergeant Greg Melton. He was actually nominated by the Chief Gilbert. I actually had reached out, and Chief Gilbert said, I actually have somebody that I really strongly would like to recommend. So Sergeant Greg Melton, sorry, let me get it up here. This is what Chief Gilbert had to say. He said, Sergeant Greg Melton joined the Marion Police Department family in 2005 and attended the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy that year, graduating with a 94% academic average before beginning his career as a patrol officer. Since then, Sergeant Melton has served the citizens of Marion faithfully on the front line, helping people in need and standing up to career criminals who harm others as a way of life. Greg has earned multiple formal letters of recognition and has received numerous notes of appreciation from citizens for his good work. In 2016, Officer Melton was awarded the MPD Award of Valor for a life-saving action in which he and his partners entered the Mississinawa River to rescue a drowning child who was submerged and unresponsive. The child survived due to Officer Melton's courageous actions. One of my first and easiest decisions upon being assigned as chief in January was to promote Greg to sergeant to formalize the leadership role that he has exhibited inherently for years, even without stripes on his sleeves. Additionally, Sergeant Melton has served as a member of the MPD Honor Guard, and he earned the 2012 MPD Top Gun Award. He has attended multiple demanding serious crash investigation courses and is certified by the Institute of Police Technology and Management at the University of North Florida as a serious crash reconstructionist. Based on that certification, Sergeant Melton is assigned to the MPD Serious and Fatal Crash Investigation Team, and he is also a devoted husband and father and coaches youth and high school sports in his spare time. In summary, Sergeant Melton is a servant leader who stands as an example to all officers who have followed in his footsteps since 2005. He is a humble, reliable, and courageous role model and leader who can be counted on regardless of the challenge. Please accept my nomination of this fine officer for recognition before the council. So that was from Chief Gilbert. So Sergeant Melton, if you want to come up to the front, you're welcome to bring your amazing wife as well, if you would like, since she is, part of the package. Did you bring any other family members? Anyone? Oh, all of them. You can bring them all up here. Bring them all up here. All right. All right. Everyone else, come on in, all council members. Oh, Chief Gilbert, I didn't see you in the back there. Come on up. It's okay. You were hiding in the back. I'm so sorry.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you. Congratulations. You guys have something to be proud of. I'm sure you're all proud. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate the good work. And yes, sometimes social media is your friend, and that's where I found this photo. It was a good one. It was a good one, though. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, did you take that photo? One of our own council members took that photo. Look at that, full circle. All right. All right, give me a moment here. Okay. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda for the approval of minutes, consideration of pre-approved claims, and consideration of claims. Happy to entertain any discussion. If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Councilman Kane, second by Councilman Klein. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Fordyce,
Madam Clerk, I'll have to abstain on the minutes. I will approve the consideration of pre-approved claims and consideration of claims.
Brunner,
Aye.
Klein. Yes. Devine,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Cowgill,
Aye.
McKinley.
Yes. All right, just a reminder, I forgot to say at the beginning of the meeting, but we actually have transitioned into our new camera system, and so it is tied directly into our microphones now. So just as a reminder, you have to have your microphone on, otherwise nobody at home will hear you at all anymore. So just got to be good on that. Okay, so moving into committee reports, do we have any council members with committee reports? Councilwoman Devine.
The Board of Works met this week, and the items that they went through on their agenda included the discussion about the police and fire merit systems, which came before us at the last meeting. Then Marion Police Department also transferred some vehicles to Marion Community Schools for them to be able to use for transportation use there. And then the bid recommendation for the alley restoration, it was recommended to accept the only bid submitted by Scotts Grant County Asphalt. And I've got some details on that if you guys need that, but it was 27 cents per square foot for removal of the existing asphalt, the same for grading. For placing stone was $110 per ton. Removal and disposal of existing stone to a depth of 4 inches before asphalt paving was 29 cents per square foot. Surfacing was $110 per ton. And the binder asphalt was $110 per ton. And tree and shrub removal was $35 per hour. So I don't know what that total amount equals to or how many alleys that is, but that was the bid information.
Did you guys discuss how that decision is going to be made on what's done and how?
I actually, this is a summary for me because I, at the last minute, wasn't able to attend, so I don't know that they had that discussion. But I know, like I said, at least we have the pricing that I assume, I don't see Mike, is going to be held over into, oh, he is hiding in the back corner, which I assume is the purpose behind it was to hold it over to the new year, because that's how he's discussed it with us before. And then I know Jerry Fosnight also presented another 13 houses for them to approve demolition on. I believe that they had 3 of them that they gave additional time to, that individuals appeared and wanted some additional time to take some action on them. And then they revisited several that they had already given additional time to and worked with those owners as far as decisions for demolition.
Thank you so much. Any other committee reports? All right. We'll move on. There is no unfinished business, all new business this evening, and we'll begin with General Ordinance 19-2024, petition to vacate a portion of a public way, first reading.
An ordinance to vacate a portion of South John Street from 3906 South John Street to East 41st Street, from Nebraska Street to South Boot Street in the city of Marion, Indiana. Indiana Wesleyan University would like to vacate a portion of a public way of South John Street from 41st Street to the south side of 3906 South John Street, and the vacation from 41st Street from Boot Street to Nebraska. Speaking, Attorney Phil Stevenson.
On, I must have turned it off. I didn't realize it was still on. Thank you very much. We're here for the purpose of trying to close a couple streets, as she just indicated to you, because the university is intending to build a new basketball arena, which is going to be quite a project. And the trouble is, because of the size of the project, we need to close these two streets, which includes, as was indicated to you, John Street from 41st Street to 3906 South John. Now, the university literally owns everything on both sides of that area of John Street. We stopped at 3906 South John because that's the one private owner. That's Nancy Rosen. And Ms. Rosen's already signed a consent to the closure. And then the same on 41st Street from Nebraska to Boot Street. The university owns all of those properties on both sides. But the arena is simply so large, it's not going to fit unless we're able to close those two streets. Now, I have with me tonight a lot of people from IWU, so that if there's any questions at all you have, somebody here can answer them. Don Rowley is the Assistant Vice President of Physical Facilities. Mark DeMichael is the Vice President of Student Development and Athletic. And Jeffrey Reyes is the new CFO at IWU, and by the way, just moved here and bought a house in Marion. So we have someone new, thank you. And John Jones, who's the Vice President of Advancements. They're all here tonight to handle it. And again, we're asking tonight simply to do the first reading and ask for a public hearing to be set at the next council meeting so that we can give anybody a chance to speak who may want to speak about this development. So before I do questions, Mr. DeMichael is going to come up to you and tell you a little bit more about the project, and then either he or I can hopefully answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. I send my greetings and regrets from our president, Dr. John Kalaga. This was a priority for him. He really wanted to be here tonight. I think there's only one thing that would have kept him from coming here tonight, and that was his surgeon telling him, you're not allowed to leave the house yet. He had a fairly significant surgery done just 2 weeks ago, right after our homecoming, and he's not been cleared to travel yet, and his wife is not letting him leave. So, but he understands how important this is tonight, and I'm sure he's probably even watching us right now. Before I get into some of the, talk about a few of the benefits that we see, the win-win benefits we see of the building of the I Am Third Arena, should you approve these street vacations, I do want to address a concern that we had, and I want to address it honestly. 2 weeks ago at our homecoming, we did have a ceremonial groundbreaking for the construction of the I Am Third Arena. I want to emphasize that that was a ceremonial groundbreaking. We were excited. We had just gotten a $24 million endowment from Lilly. We had opportunities to partner with Grant County and Marion nonprofits. We were excited, and we knew with the impending Indiana weather, the impending surgery of our president, we had one opportunity to celebrate with a ceremonial groundbreaking, and we did it that day. We also understand that the perception that sent to possibly you and to this city that we assumed that this approval would happen is legitimate, and we understand how that could be perceived that way, and we apologize. That was not our intent. I hope you understand and believe that our heart was not to disrespect or assume anything. We value our partnership with the city, and we would never want to do anything that would offend or make the city feel like less of a partner than what we need and what we value. So we apologize for that. We own that and hope that we can move forward to seeing the benefits of what the construction of this arena could do for what we believe is both the university and for the city of Marion. So to be honest with you, we're really excited about this project. I was involved in the construction of the Wildcat football stadium as well, and there are no football players or coaches here, so I feel comfortable saying I'm even more excited about this project. And there's a reason for that. The main reason for that is because of the partnerships that are developing out of this. As you know, we just received, the community just received over $24 million Lilly grant, and this arena is a part of that grant. And that is a community partnership grant. And so as we looked at the building of this arena, the potential construction of this arena, from the beginning, a priority for us was, how can an arena be a win-win for the city of Marion and for Indiana Wesleyan University? That was a driving force the entire time, because that's where our heart was, and because we knew that that was a part of what Lilly was looking for in this partnership. So conversations happened early on and included such city areas as Marion Community Schools, Grant County Special Olympics, YMCA, King's Academy. They all provided support letters to us and to the Lilly Foundation confirming and affirming the opportunities for further relationships, further partnerships that would result in the building of the I Am Third Arena. So those are just a few of the partnerships we're excited about that will expand what we're able to do with nonprofits within the city of Marion. Also, what we're very excited about is, as you may know, we have over 10,000 high school and middle school students that come to Marion just in our summer athletic events alone. We have huge camps, team events, clinics, conferences. Several years ago, I used Kelly School of Business, did an economic impact study on the impact Indiana Wesleyan had on the economy of Grant County. And they realized that IW-related activities alone led to a $48.1 million direct spending into Grant County. When we look at things like the I Am Third Arena and the opportunity to not only increase the capacity of the current events that we host at our facilities, but increase the number of events that we can host at our facilities with the addition of an arena that has 3 basketball courts and capacity for even more. We're excited about the positive impact that could have both on us and on the economic impact on the city and Grant County. And then lastly, I would say with approval and construction of the arena, we are planning on adding new programs. We already have committed to adding a men's volleyball team. I don't know if any of you are volleyball fans, but we will add men's volleyball, a couple of basketball club teams, and then we're in talks about what additional sports we would add. So as I'm sure you know, every time we add a new program, it brings with it additional students, which gives our campus opportunity to grow. And with that also comes additional employees. And anytime we can add more employment opportunities to the institution and to the city, we look at that as a very positive win-win thing for both us and for the city. We're really excited about the potential of this beautiful I Am Third Arena on our campus and in the city of Marion. We really believe it's going to be a significant asset to our school and to the city, both economically and in building a stronger relationship, partnership with the community that we share. On a personal note, if it's okay for me to get personal, as a 28-year resident of Marion, who had 2 daughters who were proud Marion Giants, and who actually found a way to wear purple to support my daughter on the Marion Giants volleyball team. And if you don't know why it would be hard for me to put on purple, I was the athletic director at Indiana Wesleyan at the time. And there's another institution in the county that mirrors the colors of Marion High School, but because I love my daughter and I love the city of Marion, I wore purple to support my daughter at Marion Giants volleyball matches. I appreciate and have experienced the value that the city brings to Indiana Wesleyan and the value that Indiana Wesleyan brings to the city. And projects like this that I think can enhance that partnership is something that gets me and us excited. So we appreciate any questions that you have about this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
I might just add, we have been to the street committee, they're in approval of this. We've also been with the city utilities to talk with them to work out those issues. So we've attempted to ensure that this is not an issue anywhere else, but just so you know that we have done that. So if there's any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer those.
Real quick, were there any public safety concerns, fire department access or anything like that?
My understanding, there was not.
And if you notice, I put on the big screen back here, I'll show you. Well, I'll have the mic. So it was in the packet, the layout where it's going. It was, I think it's been scanned once or twice. It was a little bit faded, but I thought I'd show you. So this is where they're asking to cut the street off right here at Nebraska, all the way to Boots. Right here. So these 2 blocks of 41st and then John Street all the way up to here. That's the residence there. So it's just like an upside down T right here that they're wanting to vacate. And then these houses will stay and their access will be out and coming around to Felton Street. So they would cut off 41st Street and then part of John Street. Just want everyone to have a visual.
The residents on that cul-de-sac back there concerned, or are they good?
That, everybody on that cul-de-sac is actually, that is owned by IWU. The rental properties, but that's the reason why we modified that. You know, originally it was gonna go all the way over to Harmon Street, and we decided it would be better to move it back to provide better access for them. But IWU does own that entire cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I've spoken to at least one on that cul-de-sac and no concerns whatsoever. In fact, they were pretty excited about it. Any other council members have questions?
Mr. President, I did attend the Traffic Commission meeting, and the question was asked, Mr. Whitten, you asked if there was any concerns. There was no concerns brought up at that meeting. It passed unanimously from the Traffic Commission, giving their blessings, and I know the Indiana Wesleyan has met, tell me if I'm wrong, but they have met with the fire department to voice any concerns and so forth. And so they work closely with the police department and the fire department on any concerns and access that the fire department may have to the college.
All right, any other questions or statements? Okay, well, if no one has any other questions, do you guys have anything else you would like to add?
I think that's all. We appreciate your consideration.
Okay, well, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pass General Ordinance 19-2024 to second reading and public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Fordyce, second by Councilman Whitten. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Fordyce,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Klein,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Whitten,
Yes.
Cowgill. Aye. McKinley.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys coming tonight. Okay, that will move on to a second reading public hearing at the next council meeting. Moving into General Ordinance 20-2024, elected official salaries, first reading.
An ordinance prescribing the process for determining salary increases for Marion municipal elected officials and providing for the effective date thereof. This ordinance limits pay raises for Marion's 12 elected officials, mayor, city council, city clerk, and city court judge, to no more than the average raise given the city's full-time employees the previous year. The ordinance also allows for very limited exceptions to this in the cases of changes in city ordinances or state statutes, and it explains how the average of city employee raises is calculated. The goal is to maintain fiscal responsibility and to avoid large disparities with salary increases given to city employees. Speaking, Councilman Mike Klein.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, Council, the remainder of the audience. The executive summary, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. The buck on raises for city employees, including elected officials, stops with the city council, and I believe that it's an excellent way of showing fiscal responsibility is to ride herd on raises for us, the mayor, city council, city clerk, city court judge. This does not guarantee raises. Nothing should be automatic about raises. They ought to be based on merit and performance. So this doesn't guarantee automatic raises. All it does is limit how large the raises can be if the electeds get them. Rightly and or wrongly, a lot of folks think elected officials are already paid too much and that big raises are out of touch with the lives of a lot of people. And we can show we care about that money in taxpayers' pockets and not just the money in ours. People on municipal payrolls haven't always seen the kind of income growth that electeds have seen in some years. This keeps electeds elected officials accountable to the public that we're supposed to serve, and it shows that city employees that we don't think, I don't think they, but we want to make sure they don't think that we think we're better than they are. And my first idea was to have it any raises take effect after the next municipal election. Heard from too many people, and with some logic, that wasn't going to work. So this was my idea on how to hold the line on raises. And the number is the cumulative average of all city full-time employees for the previous year. And they have until, the controller's office has until June to get that info. So it's not like we need to know right now. It takes time, I know that. But anyway, it's not a guarantee on raises, and it merely sets a limit on how big raises can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Klein. Any council members have questions or any discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
I just thought of something. It mentions, Council President McKinley thought of something that I hadn't thought of. In that cycle or so ago, we included more duties. We expanded the job of city court a little bit, and that also expands the job of the clerk because of the time. And that's why there's an exception for them, because we have in the past expanded those duties and that time, and that's why that was put in there.
All right, thank you for that. Any council members' questions, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't seen in all the years of the city of Marion any issues with any amount of raises that have been given elected officials for ever, absolutely forever. In fact, most elected officials are passed over from years to years, and that's why elected officials, including the mayor, this position, have fallen behind for years in their salaries that they receive. I think this is a complete overreach by the city council. The raises are discussed at budget times completely. It's transparent during budget talks. City council should not be dictating to the clerk's office, the mayor's office, the judges, what their salaries can be. I think that is a complete overreach of this body when salaries are discussed every year during budget talks. That's my comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you. Any other council members? Vice President Calgill.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mr. Kane on this as well. I've been associated with the city for over 30 years between the fire department and the council, and I've never seen an issue with raises before. In fact, I know the council went 20 years without a raise. I know the mayor's office went 16 years without a raise. I just don't think this is a necessary thing that we need to do right now, just because I don't see an issue with it. I've never heard from one constituent on it, nothing. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other council members? Councilman Fordyce, sorry.
Yeah, I'm in support of this ordinance. I think that we do need to have the checks and balances in this, And I think as far as our fiduciary responsibilities to our constituents, I would have to agree with Mike on this 100%. We shouldn't be giving ourselves more of a raise than the regular employees, and there has to be some type of checks and balances on this. You could get into situations to where, you know, even if elected officials are below the norm in other areas or other demographics, those are those demographics. We know what our salary is going to be when we run for office and take office. Normally, we don't do it for the money. We do it for the civil service. And I think that this ordinance really needs to be in place just for checks and balances. And then we would know and could answer to our constituents that we have a safeguard in place to where if a new administration takes office, they can't give themselves a 30% raise or 25% raise or 10% raise, and the employees only get 3% or 5% or whatever. I think it's a great ordinance, and I support it.
Thank you, Councilman Fordyce. Any other council members? Councilman Klein.
Just a reminder that we do indeed have the final say on raises for electeds because we're the ones who pass the budget. And I just think we need to show response. And maybe if it hasn't happened, that's great. May not happen again, may not happen ever. But then again, it could. And it probably has, but we do have the final say on the budget, so, because we pass it.
All right, thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Councilman Marshall.
Yes. When you say average raise, how is that going to be determined? What did you? I think you mentioned something about that.
Yeah. All the full-time employees, you crunch the numbers. What's the average raise of all our full-time employees?
Okay. So had this ordinance been in existence prior to this year, how would that have affected our decisions we made for the current budget we passed for 2025?
That's a question that I don't have an answer to. I don't know. I'll be honest.
But you would assume it would have an effect. I'm assuming that's why you've come to this ordinance is because of a reaction to our budget that we just passed, or where is this coming from, I guess is my question.
The back of my fevered brain.
Okay. Because it's been said that there hasn't been a problem before, so that's why I'm curious.
No, I just, well, I think as electeds, we need to set an example on fiscal, and I mean, I explained all that, but yeah, to answer your original question, I don't have an answer. I don't know.
Thank you. Councilwoman Devine.
Is the goal of this to make sure that we don't have any huge pay discrepancies in the future? Is kind of the goal to make sure elected officials are seeing cost of living increases or regular salary increases so that we don't have another 10, 15, 20-year time span without any type of adjustment? Is that part of this?
Yeah.
I'll chime in. I think that's where I was going with this because, you know, we had basically a correction made because of neglect of not doing that for 15 years. So it seems to me like if we're going to pass something like this, then there ought to also be a mechanism that says that every year we do give a raise or I don't know.
Well, it's not anti-raise, it's just setting a limit on the raise,
okay,
if there is one. And it does in there, if whatever the average is less than 2%, then we don't get anything. The electeds don't get anything. Because if employees are getting that small a raise, if money for whatever reason is that tight, let's not poke that bear.
And are we thinking, and I'm trying, and kind of going backwards through some of the process we did this year with the salaries, I know that there wasn't a lot of conversation about cost of living. Should there be language in here kind of to talk more on what Mr. Marshall said is kind of, instead of putting it towards average increases, maybe look at that cost of living piece as well. Because ultimately, that's what we're talking about 90% of the time is if the cost of living has gone up to such a point that we need to increase everybody, then we as elected officials need to see some of that as well. Or, because that's where those discrepancies I feel like come from, is if you're giving a 5% cost of living increase and then another 3%, and, you know, very quickly you're at 10 to 15% difference, where council may say, well, we don't need that. And then we get another adjustment where you're hitting those larger numbers. I'm just thinking out loud on other language maybe to clarify this. Or,
Right. My short answer to that is no. That raises ought to be on merit and not automatic.
Councilwoman Devine, did you have anything else?
Well, I'm still kind of thinking on it, on the language. And that's where some of my questions was if we were trying to adjust cost of living or if we were just trying to, if he said merit. I'm not sure how we would look at merit for elected officials, I guess is my other question. I mean, if you're thinking you want it to be on merit, then you're saying merit for the employees and how they do to get that average amount to then figure out elected official. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to run it through my head.
Yeah, for the electeds, it's merely based on that average. I mean, we have elections to show whether we have merit or not.
Do you want us to come back to you?
Either way.
Okay.
Sorry, either
That's
way.
okay.
I'm still
Just want to be
calculating
respectful, yeah.
some of the language
Sometimes
through
I know
there.
you got to think it through.
And I don't know, is this something, we probably don't have a committee other than whatever the finance committee or the budget committee to kind of discuss the language, not that we can't keep doing it here, but to maybe do further conversation on it. Because it sounds like obviously there's some, back and forth on what the meaning behind it and what the language should be. And I don't know that I'm necessarily against setting some sort of limit because you don't want to allow elected officials to just have carte blanche to raise our, decide, okay, well, we've had a rough year, so we ought to get a 20% increase, and to make more people want to, become elected officials. I don't know that we need to do that, but if it's something that also protects so that we don't have to have another major course correction with salaries for elected officials. But it sounds like the thought process wasn't to have it be automatic, but more to set kind of the limits of what we would be looking at if we were deciding to do some sort of elected official pay increase. Am I hearing that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not sure this language says that to me, I guess is where I'm going. 100%. And I don't know why, I'm just saying.
Okay. The language simply says this is the limit on what municipal elected employees can get, unless ordinance or statute expands their duties.
Any other council members? Councilman Fordyce?
I think we're just complicating this too much. I think that what I get from Mike's ordinance is, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think on this budget session, we went around and different employees got different amounts of raises. So I think what Mike is saying is that if all those raises, you take the average of the percentage of raise that they got, like we gave 5.5, some of them got 6.5, some of them got 15%, some of them got 18%. If you take the average of all those, what this ordinance states is that elected official cannot go over above that average of the raise that the city employees got. Is that right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, so if the average of all the full-time city employees was 12%.
Sure, we can't go over 12%
We can't go over
for
a 12%
ourselves,
raise.
which just makes,
It's merely setting a limit.
Yeah, it just makes sense. I mean,
whether
to me, is the way I read the ordinance and all of it, except for special exceptions, and he's got that in there. If we just give everybody a 5% raise, that's going to be the average, then the elected officials can't get over 5% raise in that budget season, is what he's saying. Except for special exceptions for the judges, the clerks. That's the way I'm reading it. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I think it's a good safeguard. I mean, if we give a cost of living to all the employees at 3%, which we have done, the previous councils have done, and us veterans have done, and we take a 5%, what does that say? I think that's what he's trying to negate here, is that if we give employees a 3% raise, we can't get over a 3% raise. And the elected officials can't take more than, because we've done some corrections on this budget season, and I think we're good with that right now. So, and we're not saying we can't give police 7%, or fire 6%, or the mayor 7%. He's just saying that the average of all of them, we cannot, as elected officials, go over that.
Now, see, that confuses me, because you said elected officials, the judges, the clerks, the mayor, us, we are all.
I said except for special exceptions.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
There's special exceptions in there.
All right, just 1 second.
Are you done, Gary, or not?
All right, come on.
Well, if he wants to finish, go ahead.
He's going to hold on. You got the floor, Vice President.
All elected officials is what this is saying. And then you said a while ago that, well, the judges are a little different because we gave them more responsibility. We gave Mike Graff more responsibility. We gave Jerry Falsnight more responsibility. We even took on responsibilities with the vouchers now. So I think it's, I guess I'm looking at it more, and you're saying, well, if the city employees only get 3%, then there's a safeguard in there that we can't. Well, what about the 20 years that all the employees was getting at least 3% for 20 years, but we didn't take nothing? The mayor's office didn't take nothing. I mean, to me, it's kind of, I feel like this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it situation. And our safeguard is just what, like you said, Ms. Klein, is that I guess our evaluation of how we're doing is if we're not doing our job, people don't think we're doing it right, they're going to vote us out of office. I don't think we need a mechanism like this in there. And like you said, we passed a budget. Ultimately, we're going to say what raises we think are right or wrong eventually anyway.
Thank you. Councilman Kane.
Well, I certainly agree with Mr. Cowgill, and my exact statement was going to be, don't fix something that isn't broken. This has never happened in the history of the city council. Now, if we were to use this ordinance and took an average of the salary increases of the city employees and then matched that, we would have given ourselves a bigger raise than what we got. That's a fact. But that's what the ordinance says.
It says you can't exceed it, yeah. We could.
No, and it wouldn't. No, wait a minute.
One at a time.
I've got the floor.
Yep, Councilman Kane.
So if you take the average of all the city raises, let's say that's 8%. We would have given ourselves an 8% raise. We did not do that, and we wouldn't have done that. This has never happened. We're trying to fix something, like Mr. Cowgill said, that's not broken. That's not broken. The question was asked earlier too, does this address cost of living increases? No, absolutely it does not. It does not. And so, here again, I think this is wasted effort. This has never happened in the history of the city council, and I am totally against this because I think this is a complete overreach because we are infringing on the city clerk's office, the judges, and the mayor's office. We have discussions at budget talks. This can certainly be ironed out at that time without adding another layer of ordinances to this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Klein.
Let me reread the very first sentence of the ordinance. No salary increase for any Marion municipal elected official shall exceed the cumulative average pay increase of all non-full-time elected municipal employees in the previous year's budget. It does not guarantee any municipal official any raise. The average increase could be 8%. That is not a guarantee that any elected official gets 8%. It just limits it at no more than 8%. This guarantees nobody any raises. It just sets a limit for when things get out of hand. And just because something has never happened doesn't mean that something new can't happen.
Thank you. And I just wanted some clarification from what I heard towards the end of Councilman Kane. From what I understand, he said that we could have taken the 8%, but we didn't. Is that what you said? I just want to make sure you're clear. Okay.
Exactly.
That you'd understand that, yeah.
And I'm throwing an 8% out there as a guess. That would be a total guess. I don't think anybody has those figures that we could come up with. But it would certainly be more if we wanted to give ourselves and match that cumulative raise. We have that authority to do so. But I've never seen this council do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members?
And one more thing, you know, a lot of people and in the audience and people that are listening online and so forth, when we we did give ourselves a raise. The city council, we gave ourselves a raise. And I think I mentioned it at a time, I think it was $37 a month. It was like if you want to bring it down to us, and I always said this, because I'm in the fuel business. So it's like giving ourselves a half a tank of gas per month. That's what our raise was. So it's literally not thousands and thousands of dollars. It's a few dollars every month. That's what it amounts to.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? I will add, just listening, well, first of all, Councilman Klein, I know you put some work into putting this together, and I appreciate where you're coming from on this, and wanting to put some safeguards in and some protection mechanisms, and as a fiscal conservative myself, I do appreciate where you're coming from on this. Just one thing that stood out that you said, though, because I really came into this with an open mind just to hear it out, is that you said elections, something to the effect of elections will show the merit. And it really stood out to me that, you know, our accountability is with the people that vote us in. If they don't like the budgets we pass, they don't like the raises we give, well, then run against us, get us out of here, right? And I think that at the end of the day, ultimately, that's the final ordinance, so to speak. If they don't like it, don't vote for us. The other concern I have with this is if you have 5 council members that want a raise above the average, then it just takes those 5 council members to say this is something that would be passed. It would only take those 5 to get rid of this ordinance or amend it. So it's as easily as it could possibly be passed, it's easily could be gotten rid of or amended if you just had a simple majority. And so it's not like Loctite. The other thing was, you know, I feel like you could force the hand that, I'm not saying this council, but future councils would feel the need that they would need to give a raise just to keep up. In the fear that if we don't give a raise, say for 5 or 10 years, or there's an economic slump or whatever to the council or the mayor, then when that time is up, well, we can't catch up. We're stuck at the cumulative at that point, which essentially I think is what has happened to what we did this year. Is, you know, from what I understand, the previous administration didn't give a raise to the mayor's office, and there was just a lot of discrepancies with pay for those positions versus what they would be in the private sector. And so here you had, we'll say it, a council and or administration that was trying to be fiscally conservative and not give themselves raises, but then, hey, things are better now and we have more influx of we'll say, some more money and more taxpayer dollars. Hey, let's catch this up. Let's make what's right, and not continue the pay freeze, so to speak. And so that's my fear, is that if something like this was in place, that could really tie our hands. And if we got to that point and the whole council or 5 members said, oh yeah, we really need to catch up, all we're gonna do is just vote this to be gotten rid of or amended. And so I just don't see it really being, you know, something that would be enforced for the whole council if you only had 5 members that didn't want it. So those are my thoughts on it, but I do appreciate, like, I do know where you're coming from on this. You know, when I look on the national level, I see issues there sometimes, but I think on a local level here, on a micro level, our constituents know, I think, that we mean well, and sometimes we have to make things right. And when, we'll just use this last example, when the mayor is almost making the same as his department heads and almost gonna make less than a department head, or even some people that aren't department heads, okay, that's an issue, and we've got to get it caught up. And if we were to pass this, essentially, we would just say, well, we better give that raise, otherwise in 5 years, if we don't, your pay is going to be behind mayor or clerk's office. You know, we need to be able to attract talent as such as we have. And I don't want it to tie our hands in the future and hurt our ability to attract quality candidates to those positions. So I'll leave it with that. Councilman Klein, did you have something?
Yeah, just going to your comment about a handful of people deciding to toss this ordinance out. You could say that about any of our bloody ordinances. 5 of us can say, hey, we don't need speed limits. So
what I'm saying, this is more like a rule on ourselves. You know what I mean? That the ordinances for speeding, that's different. We have neighborhoods. This is an ordinance, I'm saying, on ourselves, or quickly we could just say, you know what, we need to catch this up like we would have had. If this ordinance was in place for the last 10 years and then we hit this situation this year and we're like, whoa, we've got department heads making near the same as the mayor, I probably would have been a council member that would have said, well, okay, let's change that. Let's get rid of this or amend it, something along that lines. I just don't want to put us in a bad situation in the future. But like I said, I mean, I don't disagree that we need to be fiscally careful with the city and the taxpayers' money, but that's why we do things in the open. That's why we're having this meeting. That's why we have elections. And at the end of the day, if they don't like the raises that we give, they think we're being too greedy or whatever, run against us, vote us out. That's all I have to say. Any other council members? Yeah.
I'm going to make one more comment, and I'm going to make one more comment and then I'll be done with this. In transparency, I have had discussion with mayors past. And one of the reasons mayors don't get raises is because the existing mayor thinks if he can keep his salary low, it will limit the people that run against him. I've had that discussion with past mayors. Those are exact quote. Those are exact quotes. So we don't want to get ourselves in that position. But for the last 15 or 16 years, that's been part of the problem. That's been the issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other council members?
Will the president entertain a motion?
Sure, you can make a motion, yeah.
I move we pass General Ordinance 2024 to second reading and public, on first reading to second reading and public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Klein, a second by Councilman Fordyce. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane,
No.
Marshall,
Because I'd like to hear the public's opinion on this, I'm going to vote aye. Yes.
Fordyce,
Yes.
Brunner,
No.
Klein,
Yes.
Devine,
I think I agree with Councilman Marshall. I'll say yes to get it to public hearing.
Witten,
Yes.
Cowgill,
No.
McKinley,
No. What was the final vote? 5-4?
5-4.
Okay. So that will pass on to second reading, public hearing, General Ordinance 2024. Good discussion. Thank you, council members. And we're moving on to General Ordinance 21-2024, amending school zone ordinance first reading.
An ordinance amending the times for the scheduled school zones. The Marion Police Department has requested to have the school zones speed limit restriction signage changed from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. to reflect the actual hours the school activities begin and end. This will help to better enforce the areas during school days. This is brought forth with a favorable recommendation from the Marion Traffic Commission as discussed on 10/15/24. Speaking, City Engineer, City Planner, Mike Grapp.
Good evening. So this is, since I've been here, this is the third time that I've amended this ordinance. So we can see that that schools have changed times, and so we try to keep up with that in relation to how the areas are patrolled. I did have a couple of council people that showed expressed some concern that the 4 o'clock may be too early for some of the schools go right up until 4, so there might be a little bit of overlap. So I spoke with Captain Tittle from the Marion Police Department that brought this to us, expressed the concern. He was fine with that. He just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that some schools let out at 2:30, so we're still a 2-hour time frame where there may not be anybody there, but that it's still posted. That the signage will still always say when children are present. So on school days, like we have when there's no school, those hours don't matter, or that speed zone doesn't matter. So I'll entertain any questions, but I think that he's okay if you want to go forward and amend it to keep it from instead of from 7:30 to 4:30 to change it from 7 to 4:30. So.
All right.
4:30. They want to keep it 4:30 now.
Thank you.
They want to amend it. So.
Yeah, we'll have that discussion on whether we amend that. So, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I know I was one of them, Councilwoman Devine. You know, we both have kids that go to, well, Marion schools, and yeah, I know at the high school they get out like 3:56 or something like that, and so they're literally just hitting the streets at 4 o'clock. I mean, my office is right there, so I see it. They walk right across the front of my property, so I see when they're out there. So I do think we should keep that at 4:30. Councilman Klein.
Well, speaking of schools, what's the feedback from school officials on this, if there is any?
Well, again, Captain Tittle brought it to the Traffic Commission because he had conversations with the school officials. Some of them, again, get out a little bit earlier. Some of them get out a little bit later. They didn't seem to be too concerned because probably of the age at the high school, that didn't seem to matter to them. But as I told him, I said, for me, my position is just to put up the signs. Theirs is to enforce it. And what we don't want to get into, which we've had discussions, is, as you can see on the ordinance itself, there's several areas in here where there are school zones, and we don't want to reflect different times for different areas, because I don't think that people, if you're driving around, if it's a consistency in your head that if I'm in a school zone, this is the hour. We don't want to make it at 2:30 in one area and then 4:15 in another. I think it gets too convoluted. So.
Okay. Any other council members' questions?
Well, and I brought this up just so that everybody knows, the McCullough gets out at 3:40, Justice gets out at 3:50, and then the high school at 3:56. And my main concern was not only the times that they get out of school, but once you hit Justice, McCullough, or the high school, you're talking about a lot of after-school activities. So you're talking about a lot of kids that are still in moving pieces in those schools. Granted, it's not the whole school, but I think that's important, that if these school zones are specifically to protect the kids, then shutting them off at 4 o'clock when we still have a lot of activity with the youth around those buildings. To me personally, I don't think that that's the right move. I think we need to keep it at the 4:30. But I do see the need for the 7 because the elementary schools start at 7:15. So.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's pretty no-brainer. Like, wouldn't we all rather just err on the side of caution? You know, like some kids are still floating to school and then they come out, wait a couple minutes. So yeah, an extra 30 minutes, I don't think that hurts to keep that at 4:30. It's my opinion. Any other council members?
I would agree with that, with Councilman or Councilwoman Devine and you. I think it should be at least 4:30, be truthfully honest with you. 7 to 4:30 at least. Like you said, there are a lot of after-school activities and stragglers. If they have to stay after for some particular reason or something, I don't think that would be a problem at all. Do you, Mike?
No, it's 4:30 now, so you're not changing that.
7 makes sense.
You're not changing that at all. You're just starting the time earlier.
Sure.
Again, I have an amended per Council President's suggestion. I brought you an amended ordinance, but I don't know the process. That would be up to legal on whether or not you can accept that. So.
Yeah, I talked to Mike earlier just because we said that might be an idea floated around. So it had him just type it up to say 7 a.m. to 4:30, just in case you wanted to see it. And if we did amend it, we had a copy of it for the clerk's office as well. Sure. So, yeah.
We can amend it on first reading.
Any other council members? Okay. I would entertain a motion.
I would make the motion to amend General Ordinance 21-24 of the School Zone Ordinance to second reading, public hearing, with the change from 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Fordyce, second by Councilman Witten. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane.
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Fordyce,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Klein,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Cowgill,
Aye.
McKinley.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate
I'll leave
it.
these for you here.
Yep, if you give the clerks a copy as well.
They got copies.
Did you get one? Okay. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
You need to vote on the main motion now.
No, that was just to amend this. Okay,
Yes, that was just on the amendment.
thank you. Amendment to the amendment. All right, so we would entertain another motion to pass it as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Devine, second by Councilman Fordyce. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Fordyce,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Klein,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Cowgill,
Aye.
McKinley.
Yes. All right, now, General Ordinance 21, 2024, amending school zone ordinance. We'll go to a second reading public hearing. Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate you hanging out to the end with us. And then moving on to the last new business, General Ordinance 22-2024, repealing the purchasing ordinance, first reading.
An ordinance repealing City of Marion, Indiana purchasing ordinance number 48, 1998. Ordinance 48, 1998 imposes limitations that are more restrictive than Indiana statutes on the topic. For example, it requires soliciting of quotes and bidding for items purchased between $25,000 and $50,000. State law allows for purchases that are less than $50,000 without receiving bids. Furthermore, Ordinance 48, 1998 requires items to be made in America, which is increasingly difficult to do. Speaking, Corporate Counsel Michael Hotz.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. The best for last here today. All right. Well, I'll try to be brief here and answer any questions you guys may have. So I guess to give you a little context here, we, as a Class 2 city, most of our purchasing takes place through the Board of Public Works. There are various statutes on the record books for how we procure personal property, even real property. This ordinance was passed, looks like back in 1998, and it seems to deal predominantly with personal property. So real estate being a whole different thing that would happen here. The statutes have changed through the years, right? And so when we procure things, it really depends on what's the value of the, for example, say we're buying a fire truck. A fire truck's going to be probably about $800,000, maybe a little bit more, depending on where that is. So we're going to be looking at something like that potentially. It's over $150,000. We're probably going to bid that out. Now, on the other hand, we may get a police car, specialty equipment, maybe a limited supply of it. There may be some exceptions that we don't necessarily have to bid that out because of it's just an emergency purpose or something like that. In between sort of $50,000 and $150,000, we're generally going to go out and we're going to sort of solicit 3 bids. We're going to look at them. Over 150, we're going to give out a request for production. We're going to ask for an actual bids. We're going to publish that in the newspaper. And then below $50,000, generally, the statute says that the best practices are probably to maybe solicit, but we wouldn't necessarily have to in all cases. And so that's kind of the state statutes that we all sort of follow. Any city or town is going to kind of follow that. And then with the Board of Works being sort of the procuring agent that goes about and actually, authorizes the purchase of those items. The issue with that we're bringing this forward to you today is that one, we don't really know what happened back in 1998, but we know at some point this was passed and was never codified. So we're under an obligation back in like 1985. I believe the state legislature said, hey, you're supposed to really take your ordinances and you're supposed to get them codified in a book so we can look them up, right? So and so that people are aware of what we've actually done. Prior to that time, what you would have is they would just pass an ordinance and it would kind of be in the record somewhere in the clerk's office and you wouldn't necessarily know and you'd have to go back to that year and find it. Well, we did a pretty big codification in '85, then we didn't update it for a while, then we updated, and then we didn't update it, and I think the last one we did, and you should probably could testify to that, was a pretty big one, probably cost us $20,000 to $30,000. We went and took all of our ordinances that we hadn't been updating and sent them off to American Legal to update them, so you can go on the website now and you can go through those. Well, this one never made it there, and so it just was never in our codification. And I contacted American Legal. I think somebody must have asked, and I think the city clerk found them. I call it the shoebox, you know, so you go back in there and she had to really kind of finger search through and have to know the year that it was passed and to actually find this. American Legal, I contacted them and said, hey, they had no knowledge of it, never had it. I said, well, has it been revoked? I said, well, you tell me. And we've never even had it in there to begin with. So, and to really figure out whether it's been revoked is kind of a monumental activity. As I sit here today, I'm not certain that this thing's valid or not. You'd have to really go through from 1998 and go through every single ordinance that was passed since that time period. So really what we're faced with is an ordinance that is more restrictive, right? Because it says between $25,000 and $50,000 that you have to, you know, solicit some sort of bid. That's more restricted than the state statute, right? Because no state statute says under $50,000 you don't have to do that. The second problematic thing about this is that it does require what I would almost consider a finding. So if you're procuring assets, say if you want to go out and buy, you know, buy an automobile. So you're going to buy a $20,000 or $30,000 automobile if you can find one anymore. And so you're going to have to make a finding, you know, on the second or third page of this ordinance that, you know, basically it's manufactured in the United States. That may be difficult. We are a GM town, so it's probably a bad example of something, but you can think of other products that we buy that it's so mixed anymore, right, the source of it. And so making those findings, I think, is going to be difficult to do. I'm not certain that's really even been followed, quite honestly. Right? I know it hasn't. Just asking around. And so I think it's pretty restrictive in that regard. So there's really two different reasons I brought to you today that why we'd like just to kind of revert back to the statute to free your hands up a little bit. With that, I'll stop talking and answer questions.
Thank you so much. Any council members, other questions? Councilman Fordyce.
So did you draw up a new ordinance for us to go by, or you just want to completely get rid of this and go by state statute? Because we've always had this ordinance that we've abided by, and it's not between 25 and 50,000, it's 25,000 and above. And as far as the American-made products, there's all kinds of exclusions on that if they're not available, if the quantities aren't available, if the price is unreasonable, then you don't have to get American-made on that. But the way I read the ordinance, it says 25,000 and above has to be bid out on the open market. I don't see where it says between 25 and 50. The state statute says 50,000 and above, but you know, that's on demographics. If it's Indianapolis or Fort Wayne, they do much more purchasing than us. I'd like to see it stay at 25,000 and get bids for anything over 25,000. I think that's very reasonable request in a city of this size when you're having demolition done and other services and supplies that are bought at, you know, 45,000, 30,000, 35, to where it's competitive, it's transparent, and the taxpayers know what the money's going for, and the council approves it and the Board of Works approves it. If I had another ordinance in front of me, I would be more than happy to entertain that. But just to repeal this whole ordinance and go by state statute, do you have a copy of the state statute that I could look at?
Okay, a couple questions there, so I wrote it down, so hopefully remind me if I missed anything. So no, the ordinance I prepared, it's been circulated, is just to revoke this and go back to the state statute. So you really have to kind of read the statute and compare it to state law to understand what this is doing. But it says for less than $25,000, you don't have to solicit.
Right.
Where state statute says 50,000. So I'm just saying, I guess there's that now, that range, right? Whereas before, below 50, you wouldn't have to solicit. Now it's, if it's
Above
below
20.
50 but above 25, then you're now having to
Well,
solicit.
you're comparing state statute to the city ordinance.
Yeah, because you got to follow state first.
Sure.
Plus the city ordinances.
But we can have a city ordinance that has restrictions and then fall back on state ordinance if we have to. If we didn't have an ordinance, but we do have an ordinance. And I remember when Mallory's administration brought this in, it was just for the simple purpose of some department heads and the mayor would just dole out $25,000, $35,000, and the council got tired of it at that point because he was delegating it to people that weren't involved in, actually bidding the project or fairness in getting the project. So that's why this was initially enacted. I don't think it's unfair at all. And just to completely repeal it and then just go to state statute, I'm not in favor of that. I'd like to keep it at 25,000. If we need to do an amendment to this ordinance, I'd be more than happy to do that and get it codified.
Good evening, Council. I wasn't planning on talking today, but I just did some really quick math, and everyone can do it on your phone for inflation calculator. So in 1998, $25,000 is equivalent to today of $48,359.05. So if we were keeping up with the sign of the times, we could adjust this current ordinance and make it $48,359.05, or we could just round it up to $50,000. I think that would be fair to accommodate for the 29-year difference on the price that was set in 90. No, that's not 29 years. That's, I'm sorry, 26-year difference. That price that was set then to what it would be comparative to now.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, according to the Federal Reserve Bank, $48,226.01, but we're pretty close on that. I had looked it up as well, but I appreciate you making that observation, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going according to inflation. I'm just saying with the services and goods that we buy. I mean, just like demolitions and stuff. I mean, that's just going to open it up to where department heads can pick whoever they want to do whatever they want under 50,000. I'm just saying that with transparency and fairness, that we should have anything over 25,000 bid in this city. I don't think that's unreasonable. I'm not talking about inflation or anything comparing back 25,000 26 years ago. I'm just saying today we've got houses that are being torn down and work that's being done that's, comparable to over 25,000. Some of it's under 25,000, but I think 25,000 is a good threshold for the city of Marion. So, and just to completely repeal this and go by state statute of 50,000, that means that nothing under 50,000 has to be bid on. The administration and department heads can just use who they want and spend what they want up to 50,000. I think as a fiduciary body and answering to the taxpayers and the citizens of Marion, we should have a threshold of 25,000 and above that has to be bid out. That's my opinion. And I would have loved for you to bring me a new ordinance or state statute to where there was something that I could go by. But just to say, I just want to repeal this and get rid of it, I mean, that's.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the second question you had there too was about, see, I'm happy to provide that. It's a small purchase statute is basically what it provides. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other council members? Go ahead, Vice President Calgo.
The state statutes supersede our ordinances?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I feel like I do understand the inflation. It kind of went back to our thing from before, that Marion is just staying so far back in history. We got to get things up to date. And state statute supersedes ours anyway, so I don't have a problem going with the state statute of 50,000. just my opinion.
All right.
Don't we approve these bills anyway? I mean, aren't we now approving every single payment that's coming through?
Yeah, but
This
I'm
has to
talking
go
about
with-
on a bid process.
This is bidding,
But
yeah.
wouldn't that be up to the
It-
mayor to make sure his department heads are properly bidding?
But if it's under 50,000, they don't have to, is
But it
what
would
I'm
still-
saying.
But it would still be up to the mayor to make that choice on if his department heads need to bid if it's under 50.
He wouldn't have to, he wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't have to, but
He-
that doesn't mean he
didn't have-
wouldn't.
He wouldn't do it. I'm just telling you, that's why this is before us, is because they want the threshold of 50 and above and not mess with anything under 50. And I think that anything 25,000 and above fairly should be bid out, whether it's one bidder finally complies with it or three. At least we know we're getting a competitive price and it's transparent, and we're just not handing out contracts and awards to anybody we want to hand out to. That's why this ordinance was generally made.
So 522-3-3 does allow a governmental body to adopt their own more restrictive rules. The problem I have with the ordinance that we have now is that it actually, where was that at? I had it highlighted here, I lost it. I'll come back to that. But I will say, it allows that, but the state also set their own thresholds. So if you don't have any rules or more restrictive rules, then you have to abide by the state rules. And they actually have good stuff in here about how you have to make a good faith negotiations, performance contracts. There are quite a few rules, so council members are welcome to look up 5-22. 3, I would say more 3, 5-22-3. And there's some subsections underneath that kind of go over that, the state's requirements. But yeah, essentially 50,000 is the limit. There are a lot of rules that the state has already established. And these were actually changed and added after 1998. So I'm not the legal mind here. We have Marty here and we have Michael here, but I would probably go on a limb to say that in 1998, actually, I think the section that that ordinance reference to has been repealed. And then the state adopted new rules and maybe more restrictive rules than they previously had. Because I know Marty and I, we had this discussion a couple weeks ago. We went through this with a fine-tooth comb and realized that I think the state added and made it more restrictive on other parts of purchasing after this 1998 one was passed. Just the big difference here is the dollar amount. The state doesn't require you to buy American-made. I do think we should definitely try and buy American-made at every opportunity we can. But it is 2024, not 1998, and it is extremely difficult. And then how do you define American-made? What if it has foreign? Well, who defines that, right? And so to put it up for our city heads and department people to go, well, is that 60% more or less? You know what I mean? So it's a difficult one to follow. I just think the big one here is the 50,000, but the state does have and its own definitions. A lot of it was amended in 2005 and change, and then again in 2021. So the state has been keeping an eye on this. I don't have a problem repealing this. I'm okay with the 50,000 according to inflation. 25 to the 50 is pretty close, and I just don't have an issue with that. And it really, I mean, here's I would say is that I have no problem repealing this, but I would entertain any council member if they want to, if anything, this thing should be repealed and just be completely rewritten in a different way, or maybe have a more deeper legal discussion of what the state is requiring here. What do we need to add to it other than if you want to make it more restrictive than the 50,000, because there are a lot of rules already in place that the 522.33 already establishes. So Councilman Fordyce.
Well, I would recommend then, in the meantime, and I don't totally disagree with you on that, but I would recommend that we send this into committee and write a new ordinance. Before we repeal this, at least we have something to go by until we come up with a new ordinance. And then we can get with the administration and the council and let everybody have some input into it and get our own ordinance to where, you know, we can have one locally. The only reason that the state would come into play with that is if we didn't have an ordinance or somebody would contest it and fight it, then it would have to fall back on state ordinance. But I would recommend that we send it to committee and let's come up with a new ordinance. And table this until we come up with a new ordinance. There's no big rush or hurry.
Any other council members have thoughts, input? Michael, Mayor, any input? Go ahead.
Mayor, Counselor, any reason why Councilman Fordyce's thought is a bad idea?
You know, I don't like to call anybody's idea as bad. It's just, you know, sometimes we have differing ways of arriving places. But I do think that with the adjustment over time, so one of the things that was brought up was demolition. So to demo a house in 1998 is a significant difference in price and equipment and everything to now. So everything it adjusts over time. And so I think that us having an ordinance that is restrictive, more restrictive than the state, to a price that is now adjusted. So, for example, the houses we're tearing down now, it ranges from, and we do obviously do bids on this. Our department heads do a great job, even on the blight elimination stuff that we're doing. Commissioner Foss and I did solicit multiple companies on getting those removed. But just on that one lane, everything has adjusted in price, as we discussed on many different things tonight. So for us to be beholden to something that was in 1998 from the same exact way that it is now, I think that is, you know, kind of negligent on our part. And I think that we should, you know, try to do what we can to step up with the times. And I think one of the first things that we can do is repeal this ordinance to go with what the state has required and their due diligence of thinking many times and many people on how to move forward with that. So that would be my hope to move forward with this, but I think that we will find a solution one way or another.
I think this, the second thing, not besides the price, is that the way I look at this ordinance is that we go and buy something that, say you say it's at $26,000 and say you bid it. At this point, you almost have to go back to the Board of Works to do a finding of whatever you're buying. So, again, supplies are not manufactured in the United States in reasonably available quantities. And so I've got to figure out what the composition of the good is, how it's marked. That may be difficult, and then make that finding. And the price of supplies manufactured in the United States exceeds by an unreasonable amount the price of available and comparable supplies manufactured elsewhere. So then I got to figure out, well, okay, if I'm going to pay more for it now, because I can get it a little bit cheaper over here, now I'm going to pay a little bit more, but is that reasonable? Is that an unreasonable amount? So I've got to make that finding. The quality of the supplies manufactured in the United States is substantially less than the quality of comparable price available supplies. So you really got to go through, and now the Board of Works has to navigate that. I think that's pretty difficult to do. So I think that's another reason I just don't know how you mechanically go about navigating it as it is.
Yeah, I just feel like this is, it's so antiquated and Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we dug through this, they had to at the time, the state required the local bodies to pass something. It was a requirement. They have since repealed that. Now you may. It went from a shall to a may. So the only reason that they had wrote this and passed it at the time, and it even says it at the bottom, this is mandated by state law and needs to be enacted immediately. So the city was forced, every city was forced to do this, and they had to put something in place. And since then, the state has realized, it was a little much, and they repealed that, and the state has then put its own rules in place that are more, that make more sense for cities to operate. And so, Gary, Councilman Fordyce, excuse me, I'm not opposed if the council wants to make something more restrictive. I'm good with the $50,000 limit, but my opinion is that the way this one is written, I think it's just totally antiquated. It's just, you can't even hardly follow this. To be honest with you, I mean, I would love to see if the city actually really followed this since 1998, truthfully. Because one, it wasn't ever codified. No one ever could find it. And two, I mean, I just can't imagine the amount of time that would be spent to try and figure this out, which again, I think leads to why the state repealed that, because it was overreaching, too restrictive, it put too much on the local government to try and follow these rules. So I still stand, I think we should just repeal this, and if we feel like there should be something more restrictive or whatever, then spend time. Council members are welcome to dig into the Indiana code and go, okay, maybe we should add something to that. But in the meantime, I just don't see a need to keep this in force. But that's my opinion. Councilwoman Fordyce, or Councilwoman Devine. I've been saying Councilman Fordyce more tonight.
So I know that the state put the updated purchasing requirements to the 50,000 back in 2016. So we're talking about 8 years ago that the state itself increased it to 50,000. And the reason they did that was because the expense and the time was such a burden on the municipality in order to do the bid process at 25,000. And so they went to the 50,000 and then the quote process up to 150, and then the sealed bid process after 150, because it was the time frame and the amount. I mean, Mike can probably tell us, or even, if the controller were here, she could tell us what it costs us to do a sealed bid process. The amount of money that we spend on ads and we spend on sending out solicitations and making sure we meet all those requirements, and then the review process. I mean, you're talking enough money that $50,000 purchase, the difference there is probably less than what the whole process overall ends up being, because it takes so long. I mean, you're talking about putting it out, having a certain time frame, aside from the fact that there's emergency provisions, but most of the stuff doesn't have to be done under emergencies. But it takes a lot of time and effort. And there's a reason why the state went to the 50,000. And they went to it 8 years ago, and most municipalities at that time, under AIM and some of the other organizations that we belong to, probably recommended that it be changed to that. And the fact that we're now here 8 years later, and there's been another update to the state statute in 21 since then. So I think that if we want to continue to be progressive, we need to repeal this and go to the more current state statutes, my opinion.
I agree. The state legislator, I think, definitely keeps an eye on, we'll say, inflation and all of those rules. AIM is always keeping an eye on that. And so even if we were to put a different amount, I mean, essentially we've got to review it every year. And then every time the state legislator makes a change, we're going to have to ask our legal counsel, hey, check it, make sure we're not, there's a home rule issue here, and it just creates more burden. And then I'm just going to say this, 1998, times were different. Access to things was different than it was today. So back then you had to call suppliers, whether it was a computer or whatever. You had to call suppliers. You didn't have access to shopping instantly. Whereas now our city, and anyone really, all of us, I mean, if I want to buy ink for my printer, I can know the prices of 50 different places within 13 seconds, and I'm going to get the lowest price. And so I just think, when this was passed in '98, it was a different world. I think it was easier to purchase something at a higher price because it was so hard to find and shop around. You actually had to physically go to stores, and but now we can shop price pretty quickly, and I'm sure that I would put confidence in our city government that they are trying to find the least expensive but best product for our taxpayers. So, any other council members? All right. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I would make the motion that we pass General Ordinance 22, 2024 onto second reading, public hearing.
Second. Motion by Vice President Cowgill, second by